Hello, everyone. How are you guys? It's been a minute since we have done a live stream, and I was like, this is going to be a very busy live stream because I have a lot to cover, and there's going to be a ton of information that we're going to walk through. I've done previous videos on the same topic, so I'm not going to do an entire recap of everything because it would just take way too long. What this video will be is going to be sort of a update about the latest developments because a lot has happened in the past week. There's been stuff that's been going on in Hawaii, stuff going on in Idaho. There was an episode of Dr. Phil on. We have, there was a Dateline episode. You've got lots of people talking now. You've got multiple states that we're dealing with in Arizona, in Idaho, in Utah. So it's a lot to unpack, let's just say. So what we're going to do is we are going to start with the latest developments and then sort of work through some of the stuff that's been going on. And then there will be some backstory because there's some more details that are coming through. Okay. So Lori Vallow was in court. There she was on Wednesday. She was requesting, oddly, so she was actually in court several days before on Friday, and they had requested a reduction. The court had enforced a $5 million bond, and her attorneys wanted to have a reduction. And they argued last Friday that, she didn't have a passport and she wasn't, going to do anything, blah, 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 blah. And then there was obviously from the state side, the pattern of behavior that they had seen with Lori over the past, few months when they had been looking for JJ and Tylee. She had left very abruptly and went to Hawaii. So there was concern that if she was released, she would again just disappear. And so the judge said no reduction. But then on Wednesday, she came back to the court and then wanted to have another reduction again, which is an odd request because once it's typically denied, there wouldn't be a second denial. So it doesn't honestly make a whole lot of sense. Or a second, like they're not going to suddenly approve it. So when I saw that, I was like, what is she thinking? Part of me, when I'm like digging through this story, and I appreciate you guys sending me so many different articles. Trust me, I don't think you can find things that I haven't already read. I have pretty much watched everything. I have watched all the YouTube videos that Colby, her oldest son, has put out. I have watched every interview with family members. I have read so many documents. I have walked through every timeline. I have listened to every single thing I can listen to on this. So I appreciate you guys sending me stuff. It's just, I've definitely seen most of it, but I'm constantly digging through and I'm finding that the local sources tend to be the best. So I've been using primarily East Idaho News because they're the ones that are kind of broke the story and they have the most comprehensive coverage. And then there's stuff out of Arizona because that's where Charles Vallow was located and they have a lot of information as well. So there was, during the argument, they basically asked for, the attorney said to the judge that her husband lives here and has established residency here in the past. Her court-appointed attorney is Craig D'Acosta, and they said she's more than willing to post bond if reduced to a reasonable amount and actually pay for herself to go back to Idaho and face this. So if you let her go, she'll pay herself, which basically, I don't know if they're saying like it'll save the state money. I don't know that the state would really care about saving money in this case, to be honest. And then for the state, they said, who is Justin Collar, they said that they needed it to be at $5 million because it was more than sufficient. And they said that she has a history of not complying with different orders, and that she had multiple cases in her history where she had done things where she had sort of fled, including cases in 2009 and 2011. And they said to the court, our position remains that Miss Daybell certainly is a flight risk and has resided in numerous states in recent years and is in open defiance of court orders. She should be remanded without it. but in the alternative, the 5 million was appropriate at the time and remains appropriate today. And so the judge was like a little bit irritated, I guess. I watched most of it. She seemed sort of frustrated that they had brought more time and like another hearing when she had already denied it on Friday. And she said, the court is confirming bail is 5 million. I just want to say for the record. And so the judge was Kathleen Watanabe, and she said, I just want to say for the record that at the prior hearing, the court confirmed 5 million, and confirm means firmly established. I am firmly establishing what I previously confirmed. If that's not like a judge clapback, I don't know what is, okay? So then we've got other developments. So we know that she's going to be, once they refuse to reduce it, it's funny. She literally was like, all right, I'll go back. When I saw that, I was like, you've got to be kidding. So they go there to try to get it reduced. When they deny that it will be reduced, then she's like, all right, I'll go back to Idaho. So she's no longer going to try to stay in Hawaii, which then made me sort of think like, well, if she would have been able to post, would she have just run? You know what I mean? Like, well, they're not going to let me go. So like, maybe I'll just go back. I'm done. You know what I mean? Like, that was just a weird response to me. I'm not a legal expert, but knowing her history, that was my thought. I don't know if you feel the same way, but that's my opinion. So with all this going on, Chad Daybell he's not in custody. He was visiting her she's staying in Kauai, and he's been making like regular visits to see her. While he was getting gas at a gas station, ABC, an affiliate, actually found him and was trying to get him to answer questions, and he would not respond to anything. Like, he would not comment about anything related to Tylee and JJ. And all he did was basically thank people for supporting them and helping them. And I thought, who is supporting you guys at this point in time? Literally. Like, who in their right minds would be supporting you? I don't see anyone from your family at all saying, yay, Lori and Chad. But he refused to comment about anything related to Tylee and JJ. So then, in the middle of all of this, we knew that last week when they were in court, there was some documents from the affidavit that sort of outlined the timeline that Rexburg had gone through when they were trying to locate both of the children. And they noted that the last time that Tylee had been seen was in Yellowstone Park. A phone photo had been captured with a timestamp of September 8th, and that was found in an iCloud, in a cloud photos on Lori Daybell's phone. We also know that when they found Lori in Hawaii, they found Tylee's phone, they found birth certificates, they found iPads connected to JJ. They had a lot of very personal things. She even had Tylee's debit card. So they have decided that since no one has seen Tylee since September 8th, it sounds like Rexburg wants to go down to Yellowstone and search. So they're going to wait until it's obviously Wyoming, and so it's full of snow. So they have to wait for the snow to melt to search. But they said that once that happens, they will be going down there. The park actually would not comment because of the ongoing investigation. And then the last time we see JJ, there was a doorbell camera footage photo that had been taken from September 23rd. And that's the same day that he's pulled out of school, and nobody hears from him after that. So the last known whereabouts from him is around the 24th of September. So they're going to search in Yellowstone, and then they last see JJ. There's no idea about where JJ is. Obviously, there was the storage unit, which is another issue. So they rented a storage space in in Rexburg, Idaho. And there's footage of her and her brother and Chad going back and forth to this place, taking totes in, taking totes out. They find bikes and photos and albums and blankets and things that you wouldn't want a child would want. like a scooter, all that kind of stuff, but they didn't get rid of. And so there's some question about what were they like putting in and out. Where were they going when they were putting this? Why were there so many trips to this? Why were they putting things in one day and taking things out the next day? And then why did they then leave it there and then go to Hawaii? Because it's still there. Her credit card has expired. And so at this point, all of the facility owns all of this stuff at this point in time. And so Rexburg or East Idaho News actually had an opportunity to go down there and actually look at all of the footage. They had an opportunity to look inside of the unit, and which was actually on Dateline NBC if you wanted to get sort of a more comprehensive story before everything went down last week. That's a good one. It was like 2 hours, and it talked to a lot of the people that were involved in this. So that's where we are with looking in Yellowstone for Tylee. And then there was some more stuff with Charles Vallow's son. So Charles and Lori Vallow, they get married, and I think it's around 2010 or 11. And he has 2 older children. He actually is quite a bit older than Lori. He was like in his 60s. Lori is 47 now. And so when they got married, they ended up adopting JJ, who is actually Charles's great nephew. So Charles's sister Kay and her husband, their son and his wife or girlfriend had this child, JJ, and they could not care for it. Kay and her husband take care of JJ for a while, but due to his specific needs, it's a lot for them, and they're older, and so they end up, Lori ends up offering to adopt JJ along with Charles, and so Charles then becomes the adoptive father, but is also the great great uncle of JJ, and then his sister then becomes this the aunt, but then also she's the grandma. So it's a little bit confusing, but that's why in the news they're referred to as grandma and grandpa, because it's their son's son, if that makes sense. Okay. So they are, Charles Vallow's son actually spoke to East Idaho News, and they talked about how they found out about what happened to their father in July. And it's kind of telling because they said, this is what they said. So his son, first off, this is where they're at in this investigation. Like, Charles's son is still not feeling safe because there's been so much that's been happening around them that he won't even use his real name. And so when he speaks to East Idaho News, he wants to go by a pseudonym, Steve. Like, think about that. Like, that's where he's at right now because he doesn't know what's going on. And so with the name Steve, knowing that's not the real name, this is what he said to East Idaho News when he learned about what happened to his father, Charles, in July. And he said, I was initially in disbelief because I had just talked to my dad. I was texting him, and I remember calling him a couple times the morning he had gotten SHOT, and he didn't respond. It was really weird. He usually returns calls and texts relatively fast, so something was off. He went on to talk about how that once he finds out, Lori sends him a very abrupt text message, okay? And the East Idaho News printed the text messages, and let me just tell you what she wrote. So she sends him a text message on July 12th, and she says, I have very sad news. Your dad passed away yesterday. I'm working on making arrangements, and I'll keep you informed with what's going on. I'm still not sure how to handle things. Just want to let you know that I love you, and so did your dad. Okay, that's what she sent to Steve. And so then Steve responds, what happened? Okay, but then she doesn't actually, where is he and what happened? And then she said, I'll call you when I'm back, when I can. He is here in Arizona. And then his son responded, where in Arizona? When did this happen? How is JJ doing? And then he wanted details about any sort of services. and she doesn't respond. And then he says, Lori, what's going on? You can't just tell me this about my dad and then just go like disappear. And she doesn't respond again. And he says, Lori, it's been 3 hours. You're not that busy. I don't care what you're doing. And then she responds and says, I'm sorry you're so upset. I'm just so upset too. I'm trying to get JJ ready for bed and I'm waiting to hear back from the medical people. And she says, to make sense of all of this myself, please be patient with me. This is a difficult situation all the way around, and I'm still trying to process it and what it means for JJ. And then he responds, well, when and where is the service? I want an explanation. And then he texts her again, and she still doesn't respond. And then I'm still and then she responds finally later, I'm still working on arrangements and sorting things out the best I can. I'll let you know when I know. So here she is, like, he has asked repeatedly, like, what happened? And she will not tell him a thing. And he said, why aren't you telling me what happened? I've asked numerous times, just tell me. And finally, it's like 3 days later, and he sends her a question mark and a question mark. And he says, okay, it's been 3 days. You let us know a few days ago about my dad. I'm just summarizing this. And he said, the only information we have is that one text from you. And then you disappear for a few days. We need information. What happened? When did it happen? How did it happen? Where is he? What are the service arrangements? And then he just goes on. And he said, he was our dad and we loved him very much. We deserve answers. Why have you been the only one to contact us? We haven't heard from Colby or Tylee. I know they're very affected too. I called him, Colby, and he didn't respond. I've tried to reach out to Tylee. Is JJ okay? I need to be kept in the loop about this all. This isn't nonchalant. And then she responds by saying instead of like responding to him about like what his concerns are, she goes through and gives him the wishes for what he wanted and how she's going to have him cremated, and they're going to go fly to Hawaii and they're going to go spread the ashes. They're going to have a celebration for him. She never once during that time, she says, JJ's doing good, but he does not know his daddy is gone. It's tough because he doesn't really understand. He says daddy is in California. I know how much he loves you boys and always has. I have a lot of things to do with the business and contacting people, and it's all still so difficult. And she still doesn't tell him what happens. Like, he repeatedly asks, and it just ends up where that she never tells him. And that's the end of it. So she contacts him to say that he's no longer around, but then she never says it. Her final text to him says, of course, send me the address you want me to send you the stuff. Because he said, well, if you won't answer these questions, can we please have his watches and other stuff he always talked about he had around? And she said, of course, send me the address you want me to send the stuff to. Kay, his sister, is supposed to clean out the Houston house. I told her to let you and whoever have whatever you want first, and that they could give away the rest. I know you wanted to have it. So Steve says that he tells East Idaho News that he says, my dad had a collection of watches. Hold on. He said, my dad had a collection of watches, very fancy watches. He wore nice watches for years and years, so I thought he was going to send me some of them. The package arrived, and inside of them were 2 cheap Timex watches you'd find at a CVS. Anything that was worth money we didn't get. I'm assuming she sold everything else. So I'm assuming fancy watches could be like Rolexes or something. Charles was pretty successful in his career. He made a lot of money, which afforded Lori to have a very nice lifestyle. And he also had a very large life insurance policy, which Lori believed she was the beneficiary of, but she actually was not. He had removed her and put his sister on. So, he said he then tried to talk to Lori's brother, Alex, and he says that he was very shaky and nervous. We asked him for information, and he said something like, I can't tell you that. I've requested it was requested that I tell you nothing. So he says that Alex Cox, the one that's involved with what happens to his father, won't talk to him. And then they say that he doesn't believe what Alex told the police. So Alex told the police that Charles sort of came at him with a bat. And he says, I don't believe, his son Steve said, I don't believe any of it. My dad was never like that. He never raised his voice. He never made any sort of like physical movements toward anyone or anything like that. He said he was very good at baseball. He played in college, so if he was going to defend himself, he wouldn't just tap an aluminum bat on someone's head or for self-defense. The entire story doesn't make any sense. He then said that Alex Cox, then passing away in December, sort of blew his mind. And he said, I was much more worried when Alex was alive about my safety, but then we didn't know if we should feel more or less safe. I don't know what happened to him, but I have a lot of ideas. And if you're possibly willing to take out their own, I would have to assume the worst for me. Oh, I need a sip. He said that, and then he continued to say, the truth will eventually come out. They need to be found. Lori needs to be held accountable. I have been worried about my safety and my family's safety because I don't know how many followers she and Chad have. This needs to end. So he says that he has very limited details about what happens to his dad and that Lori is sketchy at best and that Alex ends up gone and there's just such a collateral, like a lot of mess, okay? So that's Steve talking to East Idaho News. Then we had yesterday, there was, actually a couple days ago, there was some news about that Lori Vallow's niece, Melanie, might know the location of JJ and Tylee because her ex-husband, Brandon, is in a legal custody situation with their children. And Brandon is trying to keep the children from Melanie because of what's going on with Lori, because Melanie is involved with Lori in this thing with Chad. And so during his, in the filing, he basically said that Melanie knows the location of Tylee and of JJ, and that because of that, he doesn't feel safe and she's not cooperating, he said, with the authorities and telling them. And so he said he doesn't feel safe with his children going with her. But then her attorneys actually said yesterday that she spoke with the FBI yesterday. So her attorney said she made 3 separate interviews with them that took several hours. She did that on her own jeopardy. She did not invoke her right to remain silent, as she was her right to do so. She cooperated and participated because she's got nothing to hide. And that was by her attorney, Garrett Smith. So they're saying now, well, no, Brandon is lying. Brandon is the same person that contacted authorities in this fall, insisting that Tylee's car and Alex Cox had tried to do a drive-by on him. Not Tylee, but Alex Cox, Lori's brother, who's now gone, was in a car. And so there's all kinds of stuff going on here with Alex and Brandon. So Brandon's the one that was shot at, and then he's now in a dispute with his wife, and he's saying that Melanie knows, and Melanie's attorneys now are saying, well, no, she's working with the FBI. So there's that. Now, let's get on to the Dr. Phil episode. So yesterday, Dr. Phil had a bunch of people from their family on, and I don't know that there was anything really groundbreaking in this interview. I would say I was familiar with most of what they were talking about. But they did have her ex-husband Joseph's sister on there, which I found interesting. So Lori's husband, Chad, is her 5th husband. She had 2 marriages that people know very little about, and then she married Joseph Ryan in the early 2000s. She had her son Colby, who is 23 years old now, and then they also a few years later have Tylee. Colby is the one that we've seen on YouTube that has made pleas to his mother to talk to people and to let people know where Tylee and JJ are. So she married Joseph Ryan, and they were married for only, I don't know, a few years but then he has a sudden passing in 2018. And it's a heart attack that they know of. So there's something there, but there's some suspicion around this because they're saying that there's suspicious concerning what's happened to her last 3 husbands. So, and reason being is that Joseph Ryan, Tylee's dad, apparently had custody of Tylee, and that during a court-appointed visit with Lori and Charles and Tylee, they just fled to Hawaii. So she was supposed to just have some visitation with Tylee, and they took Tylee and they moved to Hawaii. And then when we get to Hawaii, Lori contacts Joseph and says, like, if you try to get her, I'm going to file bogus charges on you. And apparently Tylee at this point was fine with it because Lori was homeschooling her and not having her do very much, and she could sleep all day. But Joseph Ryan went through a bunch of background checks. He did therapy. He went and was interrogated on record that he would never do anything to Tylee. And they said that Tylee told one of their friends, Collins, Tylee told my daughter over the phone that the whole thing has been concocted to ensure Tylee got to stay in Hawaii. Tylee's motivation for wanting to stay in Hawaii was because Lori allowed her to be homeschooled and sleep all day. And then, so she ends up getting back. So her dad gets custody, and then Lori basically like takes her to Hawaii and then files these bogus things on Joseph. And he doesn't see her, doesn't have much of a relationship with her again. And then he ends up having a heart attack in 2018. So even though Chad Daybell being involved in this is problematic, there was a lot of problematic behavior related to Lori. And her friends have said that her brother Alex had actually gotten in trouble for trying to do things to previous husbands of hers. So Lori seems to have, even before getting involved with Chad, this idea about how to get rid of problems, let's just say. So Lori's back to the Dr. Phil show. So her, Joseph's sister was on, and she said that she didn't find out about her brother. She actually found out about her brother through Lori, but she had to contact Lori to find out what happened because like no one told anyone what happened to Joseph. So, and she said that when she contacted Lori about what happened to Joseph, she was very vague and sort of weird about it. And that Lori had asked her to come to support Tylee after what happened to Joseph. And so she says, okay, I'm going to put aside my frustration and my anger towards Lori, and I'm going to go there and be for Tylee. And she says when she gets there with Tylee, it's like Lori has become just, and this is in 2018, sort of obsessed with this new belief system. She's involved with this podcast with this guy named Chad Daybell, and she's talking about the end of the world and how it's going to be this really terrible, horrible thing, and that because it's going to be so bad, she was like, I might as well just drive my children off of a cliff. And then she said she tried to back from that, but the fact of the matter is she said that Lori was just so different, which is similar to what other friends have said, is that once she got involved with Chad, she had always had some sort of problematic behavior, but when she got involved with Chad, it just got very dark, and she started talking in ways that were just not typical. Even, it's a part of the custody stuff with JJ, where she was making, saying things to Charles, basically insinuating that, you know, he would be gone soon too. She made comments to friends that she wouldn't be surprised if she found out that Charles was no longer here. So, Joseph's sister thinks that Lori was money motivated in this. And so she said that when she finds out, she thinks that when Lori finds out that there's no life insurance for Charles, then everything sort of goes haywire. Now, she said, I don't have anything to connect that or say anything to, but that's sort of what her thought process was. Now, Colby, her son, who was on the Dr. Phil show too, he basically said that Lori and Tylee had a very complicated relationship, and that Colby said that Tylee was kind of pulling away from him in the final conversations where she felt very coached. She didn't really respond in the typical ways, and Dr. Phil sort of read off some of the last text messages that he had with her, and he just said that he had always been pretty close to Tylee, so it was really bizarre. And then he like couldn't even get her to respond after a while. So the last time he actually spoke to her was on August 30th. And then he said the last time he spoke to JJ, it was like very, very, very brief. So he said that, again, that when his mom got involved with this Chad stuff, it's like she was just gone. And he said that he hasn't even really had a conversation with her in months, and she won't talk to him either. So, and he's very concerned about JJ and Tylee. So, and then obviously Kay Woodcock and her husband were on as well talking about Charles, and they said that the reason they got involved was because they had learned not long after what happened with Charles that Chad Daybell's wife Tammy passed away in her sleep. And so then they are like, well, we haven't heard from JJ in a while. So they make a call because no one was like really taking them seriously. So they ended up making a call for a welfare check because of what happened to Chad's wife, what happened to Charles, and they haven't heard from JJ. And that's kind of what finally gets everything rolling. And it was really Kay who got, and her husband, that really got this. And at one point they offered $20,000 reward for any information about their whereabouts. And they are, like, Joseph's sister doesn't believe that the children are here anymore. She said that I believe they're gone. Kay and her husband were not willing to say that. Kay has seemed a little bit more on that same, like, she might go there, but her husband was very much like, no, I still want to believe that they're here with us and everything will be fine. So it's just a challenging situation overall. And then back to what's going to happen in the legal case is she will actually be back in Idaho within the next few days. However, it's going to take some time and planning. So East Idaho News, they spoke to Madison County Sheriff's Office, and they told East Idaho News that it will take some planning and time logistically to accomplish this type of transport. So it's going to take a few days at least to get her back to Idaho. We are going to make sure routes are secured. We'll always travel with multiple offices, and we utilize local and federal agencies to make sure security measure is taken. And then once she arrives in Madison County, she'll be housed with other women in their detention center. They said she'll be treated just like any other inmate. She might have some extra security measures just because of the high profile of this, because other inmates will likely know who she is when she arrives. But she said that she'll have access to, network television. She can watch TV. He said most inmates watch TV most of the day. They don't get to have any face-to-face contact with anyone other than like their attorneys or other legal people. Otherwise, everything else is done through a phone, so through like video chat. So he said that we don't really segregate people based on who they are. So they try to be fair and consistent. So she could very well be within the general population, which could be tricky. But they said that they're also quite aware that when she gets back, there's going to be a lot of media attention. And if you've looked at the map, Rexburg is super tiny. Like, it's this little tiny town in Idaho. So they said that they're going to do their best to make sure that the security remains around the town, because once things get going, they know that there's going to be a lot of national news agencies there to cover the story. So, and everyone from the Attorney General in Idaho to the Sheriff's Office and all of the law enforcement that are involved in this from all over have basically said that this case is like nothing they've ever seen before. It's by far one of the more complicated and just bizarre cases overall. And I think everyone at this point is hoping that this will be the beginning of more charges, because currently she's charged with desertion. But based on the affidavit, it doesn't seem like police believe that the kids are still alive, so there could be more coming. And then the other issue is that there's nothing with Chad yet. So they're still waiting on the toxicology report for Tammy Daybell, and they're still investigating Alex Cox and Charles Daybell's, or Charles Vallow's passings. So there's still a lot of question marks, and when is Chad going to actually be brought in? Because he's still free right now, and that's, to me, kind of gross. So this is where we're at. We don't know where the kids are. All right, you guys, so that's the latest. I hope this was as comprehensive as possible. If you have questions, concerns, or anything, just let me know in the comments. If you have things that are new or developing, you can always feel free to reach out to me. If I don't respond to anything that you send me, just know it's probably because I've already seen it or have already received it. I get a lot of messages, so I do my best to always address everything, but I don't always get to everything. We will always keep you abreast of all the latest developments. I'm trying to do more like of these long videos so that I'm not doing sort of these piecemeal ones with like, oh, 2 minutes here, 2 minutes there. Just get it all in one place. All right, you guys, I'll be back in a little while. We'll keep you posted on what's going on, but things aren't looking good, and Lori Daybell will be back in Idaho soon. Bye, guys.